Honorable Cabinet Ministers, representatives of the international community, members of the diplomatic and consular corps, representatives of the diaspora, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and also, of course, since we are facing the nation, and the conduit to that is the media, I recognize the media fraternity. Today we are gathered to define a historic moment in the annals of the Gambian history, which is to welcome, first and foremost, to welcome our returning diasporans, particularly those from Niger and Libya. We know others are coming, and we want to recognize the Professor Jibril Fan, who is working and supporting government in this initiative through his institution. We are happy that this initiative has been launched by His Excellency the President, and it is a historic platform where we are going to hear the Gambian voices from all sectors, and your government is going to be the listener and the learner to see, understand, and appreciate better the findings of the report that was launched today. The report was initiated by the Ministry of Trade, Regional Integration and Employment, and we have been honored to share the findings of the report. And now, just as many of you have said, we want to translate together. We are developing strategies to translate or to operationalize the recommendations contained in the report. That is informing everyone about the roles and responsibilities of government, civil society, and the media, and particularly the way and manner to integrate, to bring about our diasporans, creating space for them, creating the enabling environment, and linking them up with the private sector so that they can be inspired by what the private sector is doing, what individuals in the private sectors are doing, and particularly Gambians, so that they can also develop their creativity, create employment for themselves, explore opportunities, hence empower themselves, and particularly also support their communities. One element that government would like to encourage them is for them to really try to go back to their communities of origin and then harness the resources and capacities that are available so that they can change or transform their communities, which are almost empty now because most of them have left for the diaspora. We are going to assure them of the political commitment of government to come back, create, develop the Gambia, because government cannot do it. All that government is doing is to create an enabling environment. The creation of employment is the responsibility of the private sector. So this is in a very short way the reason why we read on that why we are here today. And we want to really develop the Gambia. The way forward is for government, civil society, the media, and non-governmental stakeholders or non-stakeholders to join hands together, and everybody knowing your role and playing your role to the fullest, so that we can have a Gambia for everyone, which is going to work towards inclusive economic growth, prosperity, and peace and stability for the new Gambia. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would like to announce that Mr. James Bahum, lawyer based in the UK and also an activist, is going to join the panel. That's Mr. James Bahum. He's a lawyer. He's based in the United Kingdom. and he's also an activist. Well, this is a rare opportunity for the diaspora to directly interact with the government of the Gambia. As you know, the diaspora's contribution in ushering in this government has been highly significant, and I will quote a statement here made by the President on this same sheet that has been distributed. It says, during the last 2 decades of dictatorship, you may have hated the brutal government, but you continue to love your country. The diaspora contributed ideas and finances, demonstrated fortitude and tenacity, and used its network and privileges to help deliver our country from oppression. As a result, you have covered yourself in glory, and history will attest to your courage and commitment. Some of you are regular visitors to the Gambia, and others have suffered and have endured pain and isolation of exile caused by the 22 years of dictatorship. Yet all of you, through different ways, have maintained your emotional and developmental ties with our great country. This is a statement made by His Excellency the President, Mr. Adama Barrow. I would like to mention here that we will be interacting with the government, and we will first begin with a statement from Mr. Sebu Sedeli, who is to speak on the economic policy right for the diaspora to participate effectively in national development. I invite Mr. Sebu Sedeli.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. All right. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the Vice President, Her Excellency, Madam Fatima Tambajan, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Ojo Jallo, the Honorable Minister of Trade, Industry and Employment and Integration, Dr. Ashita Toure, acknowledge the IEC Chairman, Alaji Ali Mamarjai, the man who has made history for our country. I also would like to welcome a colleague of mine in the diaspora, Mr. James Bahum. We fought this struggle together, and we've been together for the longest period. With all protocols observed, I would like to extend my regards to all those who are present here today for this very important Face the Nation program that Mr. Silla and his team put together on a day like today. Well, I've been given a topic to discuss within 10 minutes, and I will try to make judicious use of my time to discuss about the economic policy, how we should get it right for the new Gambia, and also bringing in the diaspora perspective. Well, economic policy, by the simplest definition, is actions taken by the government to influence economic activity in the country. And those actions, mainly fiscal and monetary. Fiscal policies that the government, through the Minister of Finance, control, and the monetary policy that the central bank controls. So these are the main instruments, the main tools that governments around the world use to influence economic activity and influence our macro and microeconomic policies that will affect the living standards of the citizens of the country. Well, when a government is elected, the primary task of the government is to govern. And when you govern, you want to improve the living standards of the people. That is the primary goal, because that's what you want. When you seek mandate of the people, you don't want to devalue their living standard. You want to add value to their living standards. Well, I'm not going to talk much about the dictatorship, because we all know what happened in the ugly past of 22 years. The action that made most of us exiled in various locations around the world. I was a professional at the Ministry of Trade, and I was the head of the trade division when I left to do my master's degree program in the United Kingdom. And I refused to come back to this country because I saw the wrong things that taking place. And I'm glad that I met some of my colleagues here today that we used to work at the Ministry of Trade. But going to the substantive issues, we had recently the budget speech by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Mr. Honorable Ahmad Sane. He read the budget of the Parliament, the National Assembly, a very profound budget, a budget that I acknowledge on a good monumental step in the right direction for this country from this coalition government headed by His Excellency Adama Barrow. When the change happened on December 1st, there's a lot of expectation from us, Gambians. A lot of expectation in terms of we want to see quick turnaround. We want to see things happen. We want to see drop in inflation rate. We want to see salary increment. We want things better for our country. Every Gambian is eager for these things to happen. But as an economist, what I will tell people, there's a word that we have to be cognizant of. We have to be patient, patient and patient. The remedial measures that the government's taken with the budget speech, they've cut the cuts, and that is what fiscal discipline is important to bring restoration of economic policy motivation for our people. Because when you cut the budget, you cut spending, you cut your coat according to your size, then there couldn't be momentum for economic growth and rise. The Gambia government is a $13 billion budget that the finance minister read. There are grave concerns in it. And the concern that I have is 31% of that budget is going towards debt servicing, which is not good for our country. 31%, that's about $4 billion going into debt services, maintaining debts, because the country is having almost 50 billion debt, combined debt with the previous government. The Yahya Jammeh government put us in a lot of mess financially. So this government has inherited that, and they have to try to continue to try to put those remedial measures. So when you look at the budget, the President's office, they cut the budget. The defense budget has been slashed. They have increased, they have done increase in the budget in key sectors like agriculture, health, and education. Education with a combine of about $2 billion. That's good. So the economic fundamentals that this government has come up with, they are right. They're good steps. But I want to put a caveat around it. And the caveat is, for these policies to work, the Vice President lamented on that today. The Honorable Minister of Trade lamented, and a lot of speakers on the earlier session that I attended. Look, the private sector, this is a private sector-led growth. The government has to provide the enabling environment, like the High Excellency said. And the enabling environment is proper tax structure. The tax regime has to be right for a country. The monetary policy has to be right for a country. The infrastructure has to be right for the country. The government has to provide stable electricity supply. Thankfully, since I came to this country, I've seen improvement in the supply of electricity in this country, and that commendation goes to the Gambia government. Look, they have promised us that electricity situation will be tackled, and it's being tackled step by step. It's going to institutional transformations is going to take time. But look, the economic policies been set right. But the grave concern that I have in the new Gambia, we have to, and I want to address the authorities of the central bank. We have got one of the highest rates of interest rate in Africa, Gambia. 18%, it used to be 22%. High level of interest rate is not good for the economy. It discourages investment, it's not good for the businesses. We heard from the private sector today. The private sector needs to get the cost of borrowing lower so that they can borrow and reinvest into their businesses, and that can make things work. That can also increase the disposable income of the ordinary masses. 18% of interest rate is very high. When you compare it to Senegal, they've got 4%. Senegal, the UMOA countries have got interest rate of 4%. There is a big gap between our interest rate, and these are things that the finance ministry should work in tandem. We know that the central bank should be autonomous. They should have their policies right. But gradually, this interest rates needs to be brought. The government needs to bring down this interest rate so that to spur investment opportunities. Now I want to talk about the diaspora, because I've been given 10 minutes. I have a lot of things to talk about the Gambian economy, but because of the limitation of time, I have to focus on the diaspora, which is the most important thing for me. I have to be selfish here. I'm from the diaspora. Look, time and time again, we've all had this notion we need Gambians abroad to come back and settle in the country. I met the Honorable Minister of Works and Infrastructure today, and he said, when are you coming back? Most of you asked the question, when are you coming back? I want to say something. First of all, I want to commend the government as well for adding the nomenclature of diaspora in Gambians abroad to the portfolio of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And that shows the recognition that this government has for the diaspora. We want to thank the Gambian government for that, because over 22 years, we were not recognized. We disenfranchised. The man that I praised during the introduction, or the IEC chairperson, we are disenfranchised. We are not allowed to vote. As citizens of the Gambia, for 22 years, we couldn't vote. We couldn't have a say in who becomes the president of the Republic of the Gambia. That is going to change. We hope that is going to change. That's one thing that we need. We need that to be changed. In Senegal, they have got parliament representatives in diaspora. That's represented. Diaspora have got representatives in their parliament. We need to do something like that in the Gambia. We know you've recognized us, but we want that extra step towards actualization of the role of the people of the diaspora. And now let me look at the economic benefits. Look, we are all Gambians, and I have to be selfish here. When you are a Gambian living in the UK or in Washington or in Tokyo or in Dakar, you have the challenges that you have is you have to maintain your family wherever you are, plus the families out here, we have to set remittances here. We account for 20% of the GDP, the diaspora, $200 million that we contribute to this economy, even more than agriculture right now, because agriculture used to be, now it's overtaken by services. Services contribute more than agriculture. And I'm sure that will not be good news for the man who sits next to me, but, but that is the hard facts on statistics. The economic data tells us this. But look, the diaspora needs to be given benefits. And now that we've got the vice president here, we've got the cabinet ministers here, these are the powers that be for our country, they're the ones who take decisions for our country, so it's just fitting that I announce these things here, and I hope we will be listened to. We need to be given certain benefits in the diaspora. Malaysia and Singapore, the Asian tigers, when you look at the economies of Malaysia and Singapore, they attracted their diaspora by giving them incentives on the tax program. When you bring your items here, you get lower taxation in terms of moving. The percentages, Malaysia came with a 15% all flat. I heard the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Trade lamented on that point on Mauritius as well. So they give these incentives. It is not easy to move from London to Gambia and pack your bags with your family, buy your air tickets and just move over. So sometimes it becomes a big challenge. But when the government comes up with schemes, encourage us, and that has to be even extended to the housing market as well. We could be giving incentives through the mortgage programs. These are the things that Malaysia did. We know that this country is a third world country. We're a third world nation. We're struggling with things. But if you want to attract the skilled labor force from the diaspora, there has to be actualization of programs that can make the diaspora skilled labor force and the unskilled labor force be motivated to come back to the country. So those programs need to be, the sense of direction in terms of our economic policies need to be positive so that we can encourage the people from the diaspora to come and settle in the country. Investments are a key component. It's very sad. I was having a conversation with somebody before this program started. Africa, share of the world trade is less than 2%. Very sad. The total of the whole African continent, our share to the world trade is less than 2%. That's really, really sad in this day and age. And if you look at the Gambian economy, we are a rich export trading nation. Only 3% of our exports, our local produce exports, I think the Vice President lamented that, somebody lamented that today. There was a trade fair here today. The minister went there and said, where are the goods produced in the Gambia? Which goods are produced here? We are importing nation in billions of dollars, importing nation. We export to the sub-region, but we have lost that competitiveness. You know why? Through the common external tariff of ECOWAS. ECOWAS has implemented a common external tariff. Gambia used to have advantage over Senegal because of the lower taxation in our ports, lower tariffs in our ports, and the quick turnaround in our ports. But we have lost that competitive edge because ECOWAS has now implemented the common external tariff for all ECOWAS countries. So that competitive edge is gone as well. So now what we need to do, Gambia, we need to have the smart thinking, put our economic policies right, and the very much controlling in terms of our fiscal policies, in terms of our monetary policies. This needs to be right because, look, investors abroad, there are things that they look at. They look at the competitiveness of the country. Gambia's competitive index is lower than certain countries right now. And that's not because of this government, because of the previous government that was in, the human rights records and all that. We have lost our competitiveness to the world. So what I want to appeal to this government, come up with robust plans and policies. Because one thing is we are good at, Africans is all, it's not Gambia alone. Continuation of workshops, seminars. I attended a meeting in Windhoek in Namibia. African delegates been given a task to do. Sadly, if they were asked to bring policy measures, none of them brought it up. The consultants that were hired had to develop that scheme for Africa. We need a lot of realization of our policies. We cannot just, productivity has to be measured. Because you cannot just go to work and you don't measure your productivity. And I know, Ibrahim Asila, I've acknowledged the momentous task, not because this program is GRTS. I have recognized the institutional changes that GRTS did. And that is because of the wealth of experience it brought towards that institution. And there are a lot of people who are doing that in the Gambia. We need to measure productivity. Productivity has to be measured. But how many of us, when I used to work at the Ministry of Trade, productivity wasn't measured. I think my time is up. Look, I'm a media person. When I start talking, I don't finish. But my time is up, and I will just stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We won't be able to say everything we want to say in this short forum. You mentioned a lot of things. One of the things is we've inherited a huge debt, but what we didn't inherit is our freedom. We collectively fought for it.
Thank you.
And this is why we are here having a face-to-face with members of our government. And this is an opportunity for all of us to interact with them. And this is why we have something called Faith the Nation GRTS, and that is the forum that we are in here today. But before we move further, I would like to announce that members of the gathering can react to speeches here. But before then, I will ask the chairman of IEC to make a short statement so that we can get going and ask questions, because this is the opportunity which we have to ask questions. We have been in touch with government in several ways, but most of the times it's virtual, so all the questions that were not answered virtually should be asked here so that the government will be able to answer. And then we can also react to several issues that we think are of and important to our development.
Well, thank you very much. Mine is going to be very short. Let me first of all express my appreciation and my appreciation to all my presidents and the ministers here, agriculture and trade, and the ICO. Our role at the IEC really is to make sure that every Gambian, whether here or abroad, we have the opportunity to contribute towards good governance. And there are laws that allows those in the diaspora to vote. But because of the poverty regime, knowing that 90% will not vote for him, so it was never implemented. But in the law. But for us to be able to do that, first of all, we must find ways and means of identifying where they are. We have to register them, they have to have a voter's card, and they will then participate in elections. But it can be done using this old method of the ballot drums. We are now going to move from ballot drums to ballot paper. Because as you can see in these forthcoming elections, there are so many candidates that physically to do all together in one go is not possible. So that's why we are split in the election. We first of all do Banjul, Telekunal mayors, and all the local government elections. But for the chairperson election, we want to move for another one. Because physically, logically, it's not feasible. So we will do whatever is in our powers to make sure that every Gambian is emphasized to vote. One of the major problems we are now facing at the IEC is the issue of qualification. There are so many aspiring mayoral candidates, but it's not their will that they couldn't have voters card or to be resident here. But the law is the law. This is one of the headaches we are now facing. I'm being pummeled every day locally and internally, and ask why can the law be amended to allow them to vote. For the law is the law. So when we are now, we are going to revise this new constitution, we will embody all these factors in them. But it's our responsibility to make sure that every Gambian above 18 years, whether you are here or abroad, you will be allowed to vote. And this, I can assure you, that will take place before the next general election. Well, on that note, I will just say a big thank you. And we are ready for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Now quickly ask Mr. James Brown to make a short statement.
Thank you very much, Esther. Thank you for the opportunity to make a statement. Just so we can manage time properly, I'll merely say that all protocols duly and respectfully observed. The Vice President, the Honorable Ministers, and everyone else. Now, this is a momentous occasion for most of us. Those of us from the diaspora who, over 22 years of dictatorship, had fought very hard in collaboration with those on the ground here, and who have which has resulted in the victory that has enabled this such an event to be held within the country, are cognizant of the fact that there is a whole lot of work to be done apart from what transpired and what brought us victory in the first place. I refer to this as phase 2. And what does phase 2 entail? Part of the MSDG project is to enfranchise or to allow the vote to be given to the diasporans, as the chairman has so recently referred to. Now, it is clear that the diaspora's role in national development is well known. It is then the responsibility of government to enact enabling legislation to allow for a constitutional provision that gives the vote to every Gambian 18 years and above, regardless of domicile, regardless of where you live. There is already a constitutional provision. All you need is to pass an enabling legislation. So we are going to be asking the government to look properly at the responsibility that is vested in them to ensure that the vote is given to the diaspora so that we can continue to play the very important role in the political sphere of our country. Now, there are a number of initiatives that the diaspora are looking at. And under the MSDG, we are also asking, as Professor Farad said today earlier, to make the Gambian diaspora the 8th region of the country. And that will allow for the diaspora to have enhanced participation not only in the economy, but also in the political sphere, in that we are able then to determine, to contribute in the decision as to who governs. Now, these are important factors, but what is more important is that the role of the civil society that we continue to play. Now, there are several initiatives that are in the pipeline, one of which is the idea of holding government accountable to the people through greater participation of the ordinary people who are the recipients of the right, constitutional right, but also the people in whom sovereignty resides. Now, if we are allowed to vote in national elections, in the presidential elections, but also in National Assembly elections, it only enriches our democracy. When we decide to contribute to the development of our country through our remittances, it is also only fair that we are given the political right to also determine who governs and how decisions are made. I am able to say that organizations such as Charter 70 a new organization that is about to be launched, is now ready and able to conduct periodic democratic audits which will engage the Gambian people in a more participatory manner, getting around the country, ensuring that we get the pulse of the Gambian nation as to how the newfound democracy and the newfound freedoms are impacting the lives of ordinary men and women across the country. Now, we believe that it's important, apart from the fact that it's going to engage the citizens in decision-making process, but that it will also allow for ordinary people who have been marginalized for too long, in that they were only seen as voters. But now they are able to perform their duties and responsibilities to be more effective as citizens in determining how our country is governed and run. I know time is of the essence, but I see you're pointing. But I just want to make this point. Now, politics and democracy is about inclusiveness. And the more inclusive politics is, the more representative it is of the ideas, the opinions, and the feelings, in fact, of ordinary citizens. That way, we are able to banish